guys, this is Stephanie with House of Fritz, and I want to invite you to watch my next video. This video is a little bit special because it's part of a collaboration, and there's a whole group of other creators who have put together videos with the theme being a shabby chic vintage fall. And I'm going to put the link in the description box below, and I hope that you go and watch these videos, these other creators, after you watch mine. I want to mention the hosts of this project, and they are the Fitz No More, Up All Night DIY, Shabby Meets Blitz, and Indie Annie Jones. And they have worked to put this together, and so I hope that you go and you check out all the videos and give those ladies some love. Go ahead and watch the projects that I have put together, and then let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll talk to y'all later. Okay guys, I am so excited about this, and I hope that you check out all of the links that are below in the description box. We're going to start with our first project, and it is just one of those little pumpkins from Michael's, plastic pumpkins. I'm going to paint it and put some decals on it, and I will then take this project another step further. So I'm going to use Duck Egg by Dixie Belle. It's a chalk mineral paint, and it's a really pretty blue color. So it has a tiny bit of green, and it's a little bit muted, a muted color too. So anyway, I'm going to go around the stem, and then just go ahead and paint this whole pumpkin with 2 coats of this paint, and I will dry in between with my heat tool just to make sure that I get everything really dry before I get to the steps of putting on the pretty floral decals. So of course I'm trying to create some shabby chic sort of fall decor, and I thought this blue color was just a really good color for shabby chic. You know, a lot of times you'll see pinks and blues and golds, whites, lots of chippy paint, and tends to be kind of a fun and vintagey look. And so that's what I was going for right here with this color. Okay, next I'm going to put a clear satin coat on the pumpkin so that when I get to the point of putting on my transfers, they will adhere really well, and it'll just make the process smoother. I'm going to use this little candle cup, and I'm painting it with the color Truffle by Dixie Belle. It's a silk paint line color, and I don't love the size of the stem on this pumpkin, and so I'm going to glue it to the top of it and then make sure all of that is all one color. The stem isn't long enough to tie anything on and to decorate, and I felt like it was necessary for that. So I did paint the candle cup. It's one of those unfinished wood items from Hobby Lobby, and then I just turned it upside down, and I used some hot glue and some Titebond Quick and Thick to hold it on. So I needed that quick temporary hold, but I would want the Titebond to hold it permanently. So I love to use Titebond for that reason, and the hot glue just temporarily holds it while that dries. And so I distressed the top of this because that's also, to me, very vintage and shabby chic. And I use my little finger sander to sort of distress it, and later I'll also go over it with some gold wax, like just to kind of add some detail. So here's where I glue it on. And here I'm putting on the clear coat. And Dixie Belle's satin clear coat actually kind of paints on, and you can kind of see a little bit of a blue cast, but it completely then goes clear. Okay, here we are adding the transfers, and I've already cut them out. I know where they're going to go, and I just have to be careful as I put them on to go slowly and to make sure that I don't crack or rip the transfers as I go, because when you do it on a object shaped like this that has kind of curves and ridges and a lot of movement, you can tear your transfers. So go slowly and just be gentle. And I'm going to put on all the transfers, and then I'm going to add some white wax in the ridges of the pumpkin, just to accentuate the creases of the pumpkin. So I do that, and then I will probably wipe some back off of the pumpkin, just to kind of lighten it. I don't want it to look like stripes. I just want it to look like it's down in the very recesses. And I think I put a little bit on the stem area, but the stem is going to be covered up, so I don't spend a lot of time doing that. And I just wipe it down, and then I think I use some clear wax to wipe off any excess. And then I take a candle stand, and I do use some clear Dixie Belle gloss clear coat, to put a bit of a protective coat on this. And the reason I'm doing that is because it's very matte, and I wanted to, in a minute, I'll paint it with some milk paint. And milk paint is like, I wanted it to crack and chip, so I wanted it to look distressed. But with a matte finish, milk paint will actually adhere really well and won't do those chippy, cracking processes. So putting the clear coat on it helps to create a bit of a resist. It'll adhere, but in places it'll chip off, and that's really what I wanted. And I'm using the Sweet Pickins milk paint, and it's the Bespoke by Jamie Ray Vintage, color, I believe it's Trellis Rose. And I mix it up as is and then put on the first coat. And so when you mix it up, you put equal parts water and milk paint mixture, and then you stir it up really well. And so you're normally going to use a little bit warm water and let it set for 10 minutes. And I just used water out of my spray bottle, and because it's room temperature, so it did really well doing it that way. And then I mixed it with my little whisk. And because I put the powder in first, there was a little bit kind of down at the bottom that was still dry, so I grabbed a little paintbrush to kind of move that around so it could get mixed in. And that's normally what they say, is to put the water in first and then the paint, and you won't have that problem. But of course, I did it in reverse, which I usually do it this way. So anyway, I mix it really well, and then I paint the first coat on it, and I really felt like it was too dark. And so I go ahead and finish the first coat, and then off camera, I add in some of the Sweet Pickins, I believe it's Flour Sack, which is a creamy white, a little bit more on the white side. And so I add it in so it will be a little bit lighter. And here you see that happening. The Flour Sack packet is down there, and you can see the difference between the color. And then I paint a second coat on after it is completely dried. And the second coat is where you start to see the magic happening with the crackle and the chipping. As it dries, it does that. And I usually use my heat gun also to get it to activate the chipping and crackle more. And so you can see I'd already done that. And I went ahead and sanded off all the loose parts. This is exactly how I wanted it to turn out. I wanted there to be chipping. I mean, I feel like you can't really have true shabby chic without some sort of aged wood chipping paint happening. And so I go ahead and sort of rub all the loose parts off of it, and then I'll put on some Sweet Pickins dark oil wax and get it sealed. And I just normally pour it on there and move it around with a chip brush. You don't want to use a nice brush with this because it's just really hard on the brushes. And I just continue to put it on and move it around, and then let it sit for about 10 minutes so that it can kind of absorb and create the protection that it needs. And then I'll wipe it off. So here I wiped it off, and then I decided I actually wanted it lighter. So I took some white wax and I rubbed it all over. I really wanted the white wax to be in the cracks. And so you'll see me adding that and then just kind of rubbing it all over and trying to get it in the, the deepest recesses. And then I will probably take some clear wax and get off the places that have a little too much, and just hoping that it leaves the white wax in the cracks. And this will give it a little bit lighter effect, which also makes me really feel or, see shabby chic in that too. So here's where I start to evolve the project. I want to do some florals under the pumpkin and then kind of just glue it all together. And so I get a piece of foam, and it's just a little puck of green foam, and I glue it to the candlestick. And then I have all of these parts of flowers that I cut apart. Some of them are from the Dollar Tree, some are from Michael's and Walmart, and actually the little pink leaves I got at the Goodwill. That's kind of a shock. I was in there the other day thrifting, and I was like, oh, those might be perfect for one of my projects. So I grabbed them. And then anyway, I just cut it all apart because I'm just going to piece it together. And by no means am I a floral arranger, but felt like this was fairly simple. And so I just went with it. Okay, and then I take some chiffon ribbon and some gold ribbon. I got the chiffon ribbon from Amazon. If I can find it, I'll link it in the comments below. And I just tie some bows and stick in a little bit of greenery. And here's where I put the gold wax on the stem. And you can see that the ribbon has covered up where the stem has been glued on. So you can't really tell much that it was added. And I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of gold to the base of the candle stand. I've really enjoyed using the gold wax, and I tend to use it a lot more in the fall and Christmas season, but it really works well with this theme as well. And so I'm going to put just a big glob of um, the Type Bond in the center because that will be my permanent hold. And then I'm going to put some hot glue here and there because I need it to stick really quickly. But hot glue, when you only use hot glue, sometimes if you store your item somewhere where it's hot, like your attic or your garage, when you put all your holiday things away, it will start to break down a little bit. So that's why I like the addition of both types of glue. So you can get what you need to do done quickly, but also the Type Bond tends to hold things on more permanently. So I just place it on the way I wanted it to go, and then I do have to sort of hold it down till that hot glue really cools off and adheres it. And it's a really odd angle with my camera. I should have probably put it watching from the side, but it's a little close. But we'll have some pictures at the end where you can see the final project. And I just love how this turned out. The floral transfers were really pretty. Those are actually IOD transfers, I believe, from the Katarina book of transfers. My second project is this, I believe it's a vintage aluminum frame, maybe. Somebody had redone it and put like a Bible quote poster in it. And it had a really pretty blue color on it. So I thought it would work and I'd be able to sort of just rub some gold wax on it, and then I wouldn't have to do much to it. But that plan evolved and that's not what I did. Anyway, so I took the original cardboard, which you can see it's sort of a vintage religious picture, and I went ahead and painted it with some silk paint by Dixie Belle. I believe the color is Sun Kissed, and I'm just giving it a really good coat. That particular silk paint is really thick, so I had to add some water, but it coats really well. And so I think I put 2 coats on and used my heat tool in between to dry them so I could get through part of the project quicker. This project was long and drawn out, so we've tried to edit it down enough that you don't get too bored because it's so long and tedious in parts of it. So we sped through a lot of it. And so the next step for me was to use this mold. It's a sunflower mold, I believe by IOD. And I just went in and did the castings, and I was going to use two flowers, the full front face of it, and then the one that goes to the side. And so I went ahead and added my cornstarch to all the shapes that I was going to use. And this process takes a little while to get everything pushed in there and smoothed out. And so we made the castings and then flipped them over and let gravity help us pop them out. Before I put the castings on, I decided that I wanted to use a large decor stamp to add a background onto the surface of the cream colored paint. So I put ink all over the stamp, and then I took a baby wipe to kind of get off the excess that was on the flat surface of uh, the stamp so that it didn't get on my board. And I laid it down and rubbed it all over. And I didn't want it to be super dark, and so I really liked how it turned out. Uh, but I actually was inspired by something I saw on Facebook. And so if I can find the person's original post, I'll link, giving them overall credit, but I did change up some things and added more to it. But it was really pretty, and so I was inspired by someone else's work on this. But I used the DOS air dry clay to do this, and so here I'm just laying it out, just trying to position the way I want these to go. And I've never used this mold before, and so it was like a little new trying to figure out how to position these. But you want to glue them down while they're wet and let them dry all together. I usually like to paint it before it dries so that it helps kind of prevent cracking. A lot of times air dry clay will crack. DOS clay is not as bad with that kind of thing, but you sometimes get some cracks. So here I'm just glued everything down and just working on getting it all placed before I go to the next step. Here it's all glued down, and I'm going to go ahead and do the next step. And the original picture that I saw had some distressing and some layering, and so that's what I'm doing here. I put some salt wash in the rest of the paint that I had to create more texture, and that's what I'm doing. I'm just stippling and going over it a couple of times just to get the texture. I probably should have used a little more salt wash. I was having to try to go over it to pull up that texture as it dried versus just putting it on there and stippling and it's sticking. So that just told me I probably needed to add a little more salt wash. I really enjoy using salt wash to add texture. It's a great tool. I use it a lot if I'm using like a container that's not pretty, but yet it's the shape I want. I'll end up using salt wash to kind of cover, the plainness of the container. I've used mason jars and put clay around them and then just kind of blended it all together with paint and salt wash, and that really has worked out. And here I go in with paint to do the details. I believe this color, the green, is English Ivy by Dixie Belle, and it's just a chalk mineral paint. So this is another area that we sped up so that we could get through the video, because this, kind of painting can be time consuming. One tip I will give you though is if you're not getting good coverage, sometimes just dipping your brush in a little bit of water and letting the thinning out the paint will help you cover a lot better. This is a really pretty color. It will be great for Christmas as well. I'll add a shade of pink. I'm going to end up using dark wax on this to get in all of the relief areas just to create a vintage look. So this color pink works out really well. I thought I was going to maybe deepen it, but I didn't end up doing that with the other bright pink that I had in my palette. And then again, I used that color Truffle by Dixie Belle Silk Paint to do the center. I took some black caviar paint by Dixie Belle and kind of grunged it up a little bit. This is a step that maybe I would have done differently, but once you're in the middle of it, sometimes you think, oh, let me just fix it. I can't go backwards. And so I went ahead and went over it a little bit more with the rest of the salt wash mixture with the cream paint. Here I'm putting on clear wax because I want to be able to control my dark wax, how much absorbs and how much I can wipe off. And so clear wax allows you to do that. And I will do a lot of dark wax, kind of trying to even up where I put some of the darker black paint and sort of blending it together. And here's where I go in and add the dark wax. And I really am trying to work it into all of the lower areas. That's where I want it to stay. After I add all the dark wax that I want, I will wipe as much of it off as I can, leaving the rest in the relief areas, the lower areas. So I'm wiping off, and then I'll start to add dark wax to the background. If I can't get as much off as I want, that's when I'll take some clear wax and kind of go back over it with the clear wax to erase it. And I kind of had to do that. So here I'm adding the dark wax in those areas where I had black because I like the sheen better. I think the black almost started looking a little blue. It doesn't show up quite as much in this picture in the video that way, but the dark wax adds a little bit more of a brown distress to it. And so I'll blend all that in. And then I'll end up adding some gold wax. It kind of tones down some of that and softens it a little bit. And so I add the gold wax to the petals. I'll add it to the background here and there. It's a little bit harder to see in the video, see what it ends up looking like, but it adds a little shimmer and it's really pretty. And then I'll add some to the leaves and stems. So here's where my project took a turn. It was supposed to, I was just going to put some gold wax kind of all over this frame and let a little bit of blue show through, but it was so slick that it wasn't sticking. So I decided to get out my bespoke milk paint. It's also Sweet Pickins, and it's in the color Kent. And I decided that I would add another color of blue over it and allow it to crackle and chip. And whatever came off, you'd see the shade of blue that was under it. And I think it turned out really well. And here I am just trying to measure the right amount of water. I used 1.5 scoops, and then I mixed it up and let it set. And so I'm adding on my first coat. The first coat always looks a little thin. It doesn't cover as well. This particular color covers better than a lot of them. But the first coat usually looks streaky and it doesn't cover as well. By the second coat, it covers really well. And that's also when it'll start chipping and cracking. And I love the look of the crackle. And some chipping too. This doesn't chip as much as the candlestick did, but the crackle in it is so pretty. And I'll use the dark oil wax over the top of it. And that dark oil wax just sits down in the crackle and helps you to see it. And here I use the heat tool to help it dry and crackle, and I'm just sanding down any rough spots. And also, this is when you want things to chip if they're going to chip, because you don't want it to happen after you take it and put it in your shop or give it as a gift. or hang it on your wall even. So just using a sanding strip will help anything come off that's going to come off. This happened to adhere really well. I ended up putting some spray on it to kind of, I think it was shellac. I did shellac on it, and shellac will end up like helping the milk paint to adhere, but it also will kind of give it the right surface to crackle. So I usually will use shellac if it's something like this. If it's a wood thing, sometimes I will use my Dixie Belle gloss and just paint it on. So I'm wiping off the dust from sanding, and here's where I put the oil wax on. You really do want to shake up your darker oil wax, because all of the color pigments settle to the bottom, and you really have to mix it up. So I'm going to, spread this out evenly, let it set, and then wipe off the excess. And you want to be careful when you pick it up with oil wax on it, because if you're holding it with your fingers, you will leave a fingerprint, and if it dries on there, you will not get it off. So I like to take a paper towel to hold it with and a paper towel to wipe. And that's just the process of how I do it. And I want to get off all the excess, and the rest will dry and cure really hard. And after this, I'll go around that most inner lip with the gold wax to add to the details of this picture. Here I am screwing it all back together, and you will get a look at the finished project. I think this turned out so pretty. I'm so excited and glad that I saw the inspiration picture and did kind of my own version of it. This frame was a thrifted item, and I believe I paid, between $3 and $5 for it. Here's where I add the wax all around the rim, and it ends up being really pretty. It's harder to see this gold shimmer on camera, but in person it's so pretty. It's kind of a little bit sheerer. If I had used Rub and Buff, it would have been a little more solid, and you would have seen it a little bit more. And I do that sometimes. I just had this out because I had used it and I felt like it would be pretty on there. So nothing says fall to me, or the start of fall, like sunflowers. And obviously we see them in yellows, but I thought making them pink would be really pretty. Here's the finished project. I just love how it turns out. Now here's the last project, and I took out, I believe this was I think it was the Dixie Belle matte sealer. I can't quite remember. And I'm putting it on, and I'm just thinking, this isn't working like I wanted it to. This isn't what I'm going to do. So I decide to stop and wipe it all off. And as I'm doing that, I realize there's an edge that is loose, and it's just a paper. It's not painted on, it's just a paper. And so I go ahead and honestly, I just start tearing it off. I'm like, well, we'll see how this goes. And so I tear off. Most of it comes off super easy. And then I'm working on this last section, and I'm having the hardest time to get it off. So eventually I kind of wise up, and I decide I'm going to sand it a bit, and it still is a little tough, and it's kind of making a nasty mess. And so I pull out my spray bottle, and I get a little wet, and I realize, oh, I can just peel it off. So that's how I get the rest of it off. And then I end up putting a clear coat on it to seal all of it. And then I end up putting like a paint primer on it, which I do that part off camera. And I guess what happened was my video wasn't recording when I did the paint, the first layer of paint. It was kind of a white. I had anticipated decoupaging, but I didn't do that. So I took out the rest of that milk paint, the blue milk paint, and decided that I was going to go ahead and put milk paint on it. And it worked out. So pull out this Hello Pumpkin mold from IOD, and I used resin on this. And so I'll grab my pumpkin resin or a resin that is in the shape of a pumpkin. I guess it's a casting, and I put it on there. At one day, a few friends and I sat down and we all brought our molds and resin, and we made a bunch of different castings. And this is one of the ones I made. So it happened to work well for this project. So I used Titebond Quick and Thick, and I glued it down. And then I went around and tried to clean up any glue that was squeezing out. I usually try to prevent that, which I did mostly, but I ended up painting it with the cream colored paint. You'll see that in a moment. And when I was using the heat gun to dry it, weird reactions were happening, and glue was kind of just coming out of the edge like it was melting out. So I ended up picking it up and cleaning it up, and then adhering it back down with more Titebond and hot glue this time, and that worked out really well. You don't see that whole process, but you, even using a casting, can do the Titebond hot glue trick. So here's another tedious project of painting everything. I painted a cream pumpkin, and then I put in the details with the green paint again, and the brown paint for the stem and vines. Then I actually used some dark wax instead of the dark oil wax from Sweet Pickins. I just used regular dark wax, and I went over the whole thing. I wanted to make sure you have to seal in milk paint. So I was doing that and wanted to make sure I got the dark wax in all the cracks and chips and all of that, but I also wanted it in all of the relief parts of the pumpkin and to darken up the pumpkin a bit. And so this absorbed quite a bit, but I did go back over it with clear wax. I went over the white part of the cream part of the pumpkin. And so I really love how this turned out. Here I am just wiping off the rest and trying to blend in the rest into all of the crazing cracks that were on there. And then I used a little bit of the gold wax to embellish it as well. And I took a stamp set and stamped a little tag that says blessed. And I had to do it in sections because there's only one E and one S. And I tried some gold ink from Redesign. I'm a stockist for Redesign now. And I had brought home some gold ink, and it really turned out pretty good. It's a little harder to see that it's a metallic gold on the fabric, so maybe on paper or paint it would work. And I'm just putting some little embellishing shapes on there. And then I tie a ribbon around it and tie a bow, and then I'm going to glue on the tag right under it and add a few pieces of greenery. This ribbon came from Amazon, and I bought like a multi-pack of colors. Here I'm sticking in a little flower. I don't end up using that one. I end up getting some darker greenery because I felt like it would look better. So I glue this on just so that it'll hang down. And while that glue is still cooling off, I end up pulling that flower out and started adding the greenery. It's really funny how projects evolve and you change your mind, and here it is, I'm adding the last little piece of the greenery so that it can look balanced. And I love how this turned out. I think it's so cute. It may be one of the items that I keep. I have a booth at the Painted Tree in North Richland Hills, Texas, and I usually put all of my projects in there, and I sell all of my additional supplies, the Dixie Belle paint and some transfers and stuff. And so anyway, I love how this turned out. I'm so glad that you guys have stuck with me through this video, and I would love for you to subscribe, like my video, share, let's chat in the comments. And I want to remind you to look for the link to go to the list of other creators and watch their videos too. And just tell us what you think about the projects we created. And I want to just thank you for being here. And I want to thank our hostesses for putting together this project, this collaboration project. Thank you to the Fifth Sparrow No More, Up All Night DIY, Shabby Meets Blitz, and Indie Annie Jones, and to all the other amazing creators who put out videos. Thanks a lot, and I'll see y'all next time.